33,000 emails, not 33, not 300, 33,000, sitting silently inside palace walls for years while one of the most controversial royal scandals in modern history kept growing darker, louder, and impossible to ignore. And now, a bombshell claim has exploded straight into the heart of the monarchy. Historian Andrew Lownie is alleging that these emails, allegedly detailing Prince Andrew's conduct during his years as a royal trade envoy, were handed to Buckingham Palace and then seemingly disappeared into a filing cabinet for years. No urgent action, no dramatic intervention, no public reckoning, just silence. And when silence lasts that long around powerful people, it stops looking like an accident and starts looking like a clue.
It is the most scandalous thing I think I've ever read.
Yeah, well, the stories are beginning to come out, and I think it's going to get worse, even worse.
Really?
There's still a lot more to come out. This sort of predatory behaviour really towards women is fascinating. And this is a story of him basically going on to a British Airways flight, being greeted by the air hostess, and if she put out her hand, he took it, swung her around, and so he was basically sort of grinding into her behind, and then practiced his golf swing with her, with a woman he'd never met before. I mean, his chat-up line when he was dancing with girls was to say, "What's it like to have a royal against your thigh?"
Oh my God.
You should try that.
Andrew had a few dogs, but he didn't treat his dog very well at all.
Yes, this is an extraordinary story which I got from a close member of the royal family who had witnessed this on one of Andrew's regular shooting weekends at Sandringham. And the dog, black Labrador, I think called Bendrix, basically snatched a sausage roll, and Andrew kicked the dog in the head. Everyone was kind of rather shocked. Prince Philip was there, Princess Anne also, and nothing was said and done. So the guest reprimanded Andrew and said that's not the way to treat an animal, and Andrew told him to get lost.
The story becomes even more explosive because this is not coming from an anonymous social media account or a mystery source hiding behind a blurred silhouette. Andrew Lownie has spent years digging through royal archives, challenging official narratives, and uncovering details that many powerful people would probably have preferred remain buried forever. His previous work helped fuel the collapse of Prince Andrew's public standing. Titles disappeared, privileges vanished, royal protections were stripped away. The carefully constructed image surrounding the Duke of York began cracking apart piece by piece. So when Lownie suddenly starts talking about 33,000 emails, people listen.
Yeah, well, I think several bombshells. I mean, one is that he's being investigated for being inappropriate with a waitress at Ascot 20 years ago. There's stories coming out now that 33,000 emails were presented to the palace in 2020, highlighting his bad behaviour abroad as an envoy. This is material that was actually leaked from one of his business associates, Jonathan Rowlands, who was on these trips with him.
And the question hanging over everything is brutally simple. If those emails contain nothing important, why keep them hidden for so long? That question has become the center of a growing mystery. According to Lownie, the material originated from business associate Jonathan Rowland and allegedly contained extensive information connected to Andrew's activities abroad. The claim is not merely that documents existed. The claim is that they were allegedly delivered directly into the system and then appeared to sit untouched for years.
What's so shocking is this stuff has been there for 6 years. There's no sense that anything's happened. I mean, nothing. No, they didn't go to the police with this material. They didn't discipline Andrew. It's just part of, I'm afraid, a huge cover-up.
That is where suspicion begins multiplying, because the longer people stare at this timeline, the stranger it appears. Years passed, headlines came and went, questions continued piling up around Prince Andrew, yet these alleged emails remained locked away. No dramatic public announcement, no obvious investigation, no visible consequences, just a growing sense that something was sitting in the shadows waiting for the right moment to emerge. And then there is Andrew Lownie himself. This is someone known for obsessively documenting details, a man whose reputation rests on evidence, records, and sourcing. When challenged publicly about the sensational nature of his claims, he responded with confidence, insisting that his work was thoroughly researched and heavily supported. That response carries weight because of what happened next, or rather, what did not happen next. Prince Andrew has consistently denied wrongdoing. That remains important. No criminal court has proven the claims discussed by Lownie. Yet despite the extraordinary allegations, no major courtroom showdown materialized around the central claims in his book. No massive legal battle forcing a retraction. No dramatic public dismantling of the author's narrative. And that silence became a story of its own. Because in royal scandals, silence often speaks louder than statements. The public had already watched Prince Andrew attempt to defend himself years earlier. That infamous television interview became one of the most discussed royal appearances in modern memory. What was intended as damage control turned into into a disaster. Every answer seemed to generate new questions. Every explanation created fresh disbelief. By the time the interview ended, many viewers felt they had witnessed a turning point. So when Lownie later arrived carrying documents, timelines, and allegations, the environment had already changed. Public trust had weakened. Doubt had expanded. The door was already open. What makes this entire saga feel even more unsettling is the repeated suggestion that a carefully managed narrative may have existed for years. Lownie argues that powerful institutions often shape public understanding through selective information, strategic silence, and controlled access, whether people agree with him or not. The argument resonates because it taps into a larger fear. What if the public only sees the version of events powerful people want them to see? Of course, not every claim connected to Lownie's work survived scrutiny. Certain passages faced criticism. Corrections were issued. Some claims were disputed. Those facts matter and cannot be ignored. But despite those disputes, the core allegations regarding Andrew, the emails, and institutional protection remained standing. And that brings us to perhaps the most dangerous idea in this entire story. The idea that Prince Andrew allegedly knows too much. Think about that for a moment. For decades, Andrew occupied a unique position inside one of the most secretive institutions on Earth. He attended meetings, traveled internationally, met presidents, billionaires, diplomats, and power brokers. He witnessed things most people will never know about. According to Lownie, that knowledge could explain why so many situations allegedly seem to stop just before reaching a courtroom. Because a courtroom changes everything. Once testimony begins, control disappears. Questions become public. Answers become permanent. And powerful institutions lose the ability to manage the narrative. The theory is controversial. It remains speculation, yet it continues spreading because people cannot ignore the pattern. Again and again, controversies appeared. Again and again, dramatic consequences seemed delayed. Again and again, critical moments somehow stopped short of complete public exposure. Lownie points to historical examples where royal intervention allegedly altered the direction of events. Whether one accepts those interpretations or not, they contribute to a larger picture he is trying to paint. A picture of an institution protecting itself first and dealing with consequences later. And if that picture is accurate, then this story was never simply about one prince. It becomes something much larger, because suddenly the focus shifts away from Andrew himself and toward the institutions surrounding him. What did they know? When did they know it? And why did 33,000 emails allegedly remain hidden for so long? Those questions refuse to disappear. In fact, they only grow louder the deeper investigators, journalists, and historians dig into the paper trail. And as the spotlight inches closer toward the palace itself, a far more uncomfortable possibility begins emerging from the shadows. What if the real scandal is not what was inside the emails, but who allegedly saw them and chose to do nothing? And that is exactly where this story becomes far more dangerous than a typical royal controversy. Because once attention moves away from one individual and toward the machinery surrounding him, the entire conversation changes. Suddenly, people are no longer asking whether Prince Andrew made mistakes. They are asking whether powerful institutions allegedly spent years protecting themselves from embarrassment. And that question has become impossible to ignore. The deeper Andrew Lownie dug, the more he argued that a pattern kept appearing. Follow the money, follow the relationships, follow the unusual transactions. Again and again, he claimed the trail led back to connections that seemed difficult to explain away as coincidence. One of the most talked about examples involved the sale of Sunninghill Park, Andrew's former residence. The property reportedly sat on the market for years without attracting serious buyers. Then suddenly, a purchaser emerged and paid millions above the asking price. Not slightly above, millions above. And shortly afterward, the house was demolished. For many observers, the deal became one of those strange episodes that never quite stopped raising eyebrows. Then came additional questions about financial relationships, overseas contacts, and claims regarding Andrew's role as a trade envoy. Lownie paints a picture of someone who allegedly used proximity to power as a passport into rooms ordinary people could never enter. Diplomats, businessmen, international figures, private meetings. The details become complicated, but the impression left behind is simple. Privilege opening doors everywhere it traveled. Meanwhile, another uncomfortable reality was emerging. Every time controversy seemed ready to overwhelm Andrew, something else appeared to happen. A new honor, a new title, another layer of royal protection. critics began asking whether those honors were recognition or insulation. Were they rewards or were they armor? Fair or not, that perception started spreading among the public, and once perceptions take hold, they become incredibly difficult to reverse. The controversy widened further when questions began touching not only Andrew, but also people around him, associates, family members, business connections. Suddenly, the scandal was no longer contained inside one corner of royal life. It was spilling outward in every direction, creating a web of uncomfortable headlines and unanswered questions. And through all of it, those 33,000 emails remained hanging over the story like a storm cloud nobody could escape. Then came a moment that shocked even seasoned royal watchers. According to the discussion in the transcript, Andrew's 66th birthday became associated with the police investigation that pushed the story into an entirely new phase. The symbolism alone was remarkable. A royal figure once surrounded by privilege now finding himself at the center of a widening inquiry. Regardless of where investigations eventually lead, the image itself was extraordinary, but perhaps the most fascinating part of the entire saga is what happened afterward. Andrew continued denying wrongdoing. No criminal conviction appeared. No final verdict arrived. Yet at the same time, his world kept shrinking. Titles vanished. Status disappeared. Public support collapsed. Royal Lodge was surrendered. The man who once stood near the center of royal life suddenly seemed to be living on the outer edge of it. And that contradiction sits at the heart of this mystery. How can someone lose so much while still insisting they have done nothing wrong? How can an institution distance itself so dramatically from one of its own while questions remain unresolved? And why does the email story continue resurfacing years later with even greater intensity? That is why Andrew Lownie's prediction continues attracting attention. He believes the biggest danger is not what has already become public. He believes the real danger lies in what remains hidden: the unpublished emails, the undisclosed records, the conversations nobody has heard, the documents nobody has fully examined. Whether he is right remains unknown. What is known is that the story refuses to die. The investigation continues, the debates continue, the speculation continues, and somewhere behind all of it sits the question that started everything. If 33,000 emails allegedly contained nothing important, why did they remain hidden for so long? That question continues echoing through palace corridors, newspaper headlines, television debates, and public conversations. Because sometimes the most powerful clue in any mystery is not what people say.